Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. Let's give it one more minute to allow a few more people to join, then I will get us started. All right, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It's such an honor to welcome you all again on one of our inter-community events. If this is your first time joining one of our calls, we welcome you and hope that you will find the conversation informative and interesting. If you have been here before, welcome again, and we hope you find this virtual conversation worth your time. My name is Evelyn Namara. I'm the Manager Global SIG and Community Engagement. So today's conversation is about securing the global routing system. As you know, ensuring internet traffic is reliably routed around the world is a critical building block for a trustworthy global internet. Today, we are joined by an esteemed panel of experts in their fields who are doing a thing or two about securing the global system, routing system, and they're here to share with us their experiences, challenges, as well as triumphs. Now I will go through the rules of engagement for this call. So for this ICOMM, we are glad to introduce an engagement tool called Slido that we will be using throughout the call. So here's how you can join the Slido event. If you go to slido.com, enter the event code, which is ICOMM2020. So you can access the app via your computer, tablet, or even smartphone. Once you're logged in, you'll be able to access two tabs. One is the Q&A tab, as well as the polls tab. At any one point, should you want to ask a question, please log into Slido using the instructions I just gave and ask your question. You will have an option of either adding your name or you can go straight to Aelmans. Once your question is entered, it will be moderated and then broadcast to all participants to see. Participants can upvote a question they like, which will move that question high up the ranks, and it will probably be answered first. We also have a polls section within Slido, which we will use to engage you on simple, quick polls. You will be notified once a poll is up so that you can start to vote. The results will be displayed in real time as you cast your votes. All right, now let's try out the Slido app right now. So if you will all go to your Slido and enter slido.com, go to slido.com and enter the event code, we will now launch the first poll for us to engage with. Just give it a minute. The first poll will launch and you can all start polling. I want to make sure that everyone gets the instructions right. Perfect. I can see the results coming in right now. I'll give it one more minute for you guys to engage with the app. Wow, I see North America winning right now. So we have lots of folks connecting in from North America, Europe, Africa, Asia, Australia. Perfect. This is really cool. That means we have lots of people connecting from all around the world. So second poll just to test this again, and then let's see how that goes. So you have the second poll up. How are you affiliated to the Internet Society? Sorry, I just opened up that poll. Now I think you should be able to vote. Perfect. So I guess everyone now knows how to use this app. That's what we will be using across, the call. So if you have any questions, enter them into the Slido app as the panelists go on. And then we'll be using this also to poll. So 2 more housekeeping rules. Please keep your microphones on mute at all times. And of course, we are recording this call, and the recording will be available for you guys after the call. So now, without further ado, I will hand you over to my colleague, Aftab, who will open up this conversation. Aftab, over to you, please.
Hi, Evelyn. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I cannot say good night, even though it is close to midnight here in Australia. That's why Australia was such a small name on the poll. But good to see some of the names from this part of the world. I'm glad you're here. I wish I could see somebody from New Zealand. That would be an amazing treat to see. But anyway, thank you so much, all of you, for coming in. My name is Aftab Siddiqui. I work for Internet Society. If you don't know me yet, I'm part of the project called MANRS, Mutually Agreed Norm for Routing Security. As part of the team, what we are trying to do with the help of community to make sure that we have the network operators and the IXPs and the CDN and the cloud providers follow the basic principles of the routing security and follow some basic guidelines and the best practices to implement the routing security. I mean, during this, well, you must have heard this word unprecedented time from so many people, but let me say it again. This is actually different times. We are all working from home, and now this is it's more than ever important that we need a more resilient internet. And MANRS is all about the baseline action. As I said, it's not it's not the fullest job. You can do much more than that. And in terms of where we are at the moment, we have 3 programs: MANRS for the network service provider or the ISPs, MANRS for the IXPs, exchange points, and for the CDN and the cloud providers. In total, we have one shy of 450 members. We have 449 participants at the moment. And this is, and most of them are here on the call as well. And on the panel as well, they'll be discussing other things. So I will not take more time from an amazing panel we have here. And I'll hand it over back to my friend, Evelyn, who will introduce you to our panel and the moderator.
Thank you so much, Aftab. I think I'll just hand it over to the moderator to take it away.
Yes, hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Melchior. I work with Juniper, and one of my interests and hobbies is routing security. And so it's an honor to introduce you to our panel today, which will we will first start with a few short presentations of the panelists, and then after that we will go into a small discussion. And we also have some Slido questions, so perhaps it's interesting to start with one of the questions. And that question would be, do you manage any internet resources? As of course the subject of RPKI routing security is especially interesting if you own any resources. So if we can bring up the poll question, do you manage internet resources? And that could be either IPv4, IPv6, with or without your own ASN. And as expected, we see a lot of folks who manage their own internet resources. In the meantime, let me quickly introduce you to the panelists of today. We have with us Awal Abdul from Bangladesh National Data Center. We have Mark Tinka from SEACOM, Kevin Blumberg from TORIX, Jorge Cano from NIC.mx, and Tashi Phuntsho, sorry for pronouncing your last name probably incorrect, from APNIC. And I think we can conclude, looking at the results of the poll, that little over half of the attendees own resources. So with that, let's start with the small presentations in order to give some perspective on the discussion we will be having later on. Abdul, if you're ready, you can take it from here.
Thank you, Melchior. Hello, everybody. My name is Awal. I'm a network engineer based in Dhaka, Bangladesh. Today, I'm gonna talk about my project that is about enhancing routing security in the South Asian region. I mostly focus on RPKI deployment. I'd like to thank Mozilla Foundation and NSRC for supporting my project. And also, I got a tremendous support from APNIC and the regional NOGs and local NOGs. So the project that I'm now working with is extensive project that's happening for several months. Can you go to the next slide, please? Yes, the project started in October 2019, and in the project, what I basically do is I carry out awareness campaigns and trainings so that people can get the encouragement to deploy RPKI. I got a massive response from the network operators in this region, and there are some positive stories, success stories that I'll share in a bit, which wouldn't be possible if all the network community here in the region come forward and support for the better global routing infrastructure for every network operator. Next slide, please. Yeah, so the main goal of my project was carrying out awareness campaigns and trainings, also doing some RPKI deployathon where the participants can safely simulate the validators and RPKI configurations in their simulator routers, and they can figure out what are the challenges or what are the good or bad stuffs in all the implementations in the validators and also the equipment, for example, routers. Then I have been doing some research and analysis also. So I have a database for all the AS numbers and their route advertisement in the global BGP table. And then I figure out what are the prefixes that doesn't have any ROAS or that doesn't that have invalid ROAS. So I do some checks with their contact person, and then I send them the information that this is the problem you have, and probably you can fix it by this way. Next slide, please. Yes, so I only focus on the South Asia and Myanmar. These are the 9 countries that I have worked so far with. And I got, like I said, I got very good support from APNIC, especially Tashi, Warren, and Yasir, to reach out many of the network operators. And it was a collective work. You will see what positive stuff we have done over the couple of months. Yeah, next slide, please. So on the left, you see a map of these countries, and I have put some statistics there. The left number of each of the countries that I marked here is the number before the project started. And this number indicates the percentage of valid prefixes visible in the global routing table. These numbers are taken from Observatory of MANRS. So MANRS have a very nice statistic portal, which is called Observatory, where you can get the routing related incident or RPK related data. So I put it there. For example, here if you see Bangladesh in the tiny country in the middle, Bangladesh has had 29% valid prefixes in the global routing table in terms of RPKI. And over the last couple of months, the network operators came forward and signed their prefixes, and it became more than 83% over the last 6-7 months. The similar results I found for many of the countries here, except 2 countries, Afghanistan and India. But Afghanistan lately done very good, but I think India needs to do more work here. So they had 10% before the project started, for example, in September. And then today we can see like 12% only. But the good thing is, out of these 9 countries, we had only 2 countries more than 80% valid prefixes before the project started. And now we can see that more than, around 5 countries have more than 80% valid prefixes. And another 2 countries are coming up. So they would probably have 80% valid prefixes in the next 1 or 2 months. And on the right side, there is a graph that you can see. September 19 was the month before I started working with this project. The number of valid prefixes was just about 15%, and number of invalid prefixes was about 85% or 84%, something like that, for all the 9 countries. Now, over the months, over the period of this project, you can see end of last month, which is May 2020, the number of valid prefixes increased significantly. The percentage of valid prefixes increased significantly. It is about 27%, and the invalid prefixes is not going away. That's the problem. We have 1% invalid prefixes still remaining. I'll give a touch of why it's happening. But if you see, the number of unknown or not found prefixes are reducing significantly because of the awareness and all the supports from the network operators. Next slide, please. Yeah, these are 2 very good pictures that I love to share all the time. The left one is Bhutan, which is the first country in this world having 100% valid RPKI for all their prefixes by their network operators in the country. And the right side is a massive growth of valid prefixes for IPv4. Similar result for IPv6 as well in Bangladesh. So there have been a very good work by the network operators in Bangladesh. So I've done some awareness campaigns, and that are the positive results that I have. Now, if I talk about the challenges of why we cannot get more responses from some of the countries and why the invalids are not going away. Most of the cases, the invalids are happening because of max length. So for example, one country have 100% valid prefixes, and suddenly they started announcing a subnet of their prefixes, and then it became invalid. So these are some of the cases where I work with some of the companies, and they didn't realize the impact of max length. And some of the countries are actually, the network operators didn't get enough information of the importance of having valid ROAS, and also the local network operator groups could be a very good community who can, carry out some awareness campaign and talk to each other and fix their national RPK ROA related issues. One of the big challenges that we have is number of organizations who are doing validation is very low. Is very low because they probably don't feel the urge to drop the invalids at this moment, but we are working with some of the companies and organizations who need support or who need encouragement to do that. Next slide, please. Yeah, okay, thanks for listening. I'd be very happy to answer questions when the Q&A session starts. Thank you so much. Over to you, Melchior.
Thank you, Awal. I have one question for you, but before right now, but
sure.
before that, let's bring up another poll. We prepared a poll asking, have you created ROAS for IP prefixes? And while we bring that up, I have a question for you. You mentioned that you contacted some of the networks who were advertising routes which are, or you were receiving routes which were invalid. So you were contacting networks with, who created ROAS which were not matching with the advertised routes. Was that hard? Because that's one of the reasons I hear for folks for not starting to reject invalids.
Yeah, that's a very good question. It has a mixed experience. So for Bangladeshi network operators where I'm based in, and I'm very much engaged with BDNOG, that's why it was easier for me to reach out the local network operators here because of the connections I have. But it was not that smooth for some countries where I have sent out, for example, 10 or 20 emails, probably once or twice in a week, but I never get any response. Probably they are very big companies and they don't bother about this email that I sent out. There are some challenges. There are some geographical issues. For example, if I send email to some of the network operators, probably they ignore because it's from another country and they find their BGP is running fine, their network is working fine, and they don't feel the urge of doing RPKI deployment at once, or they are probably waiting for some more time to get some good examples in their country. That's why I say always that the network operators in one country always trust the network operator in their country, in the same community. So I always find good response when there is a NOG event going on. For example, I can give you a very good example of SANOG, which happened January 2020 this year in Pakistan. Earlier, before the event, I've sent out almost every network operator. I've sent out at least twice the email I sent out to them. It didn't work very well, but when APNIC staffs and Dr. Philip Smith, they went there and during the event, they have put a great emphasis on RPKI, ROA, and all the deployment stuff. After the events, Yasir, who is from APNIC, he also reached out to the network operators, and I am also reaching out to them. And altogether, it turned out very good. They understood because Dr. Philip Smith, when he says that, yes, RPKI ROA is very important for you, and that became a huge thing for them. So all the network operators respond very positively, and they just worked out. So I think, yeah, reaching out to them was not that hard, but was time consuming, but result was not all the same. So sometimes it is very easy to reach out to them. Sometimes it is very difficult.
Yeah, well, that is the experience I hear a lot as well, that it's quite easy to get invalid ROAS fixed, but it can sometimes be hard to find the right context, even, especially within some of the bigger networks. So I think the poll actually shows now that a little over half of you have not created ROAS yet. So that would be an interesting one. Perhaps some folks would want to share their opinions via the, for example, Q&A section, why they have not created ROAS yet, because that is, I think, one of the easiest parts of implementing RPKI. Thank you again, Awal. Mark,
thanks so much.
Are you there? Do you want to take it over?
Yeah, no, sure. Thanks, Melchior. So my name is Mark Tinka. I head up the engineering department over at SEACOM, based in Johannesburg. And mine will be a short one. I don't have any slides. deployed, well, we initially deployed RPKI and ROV back in 2014 when it had just started making itself available on a few Cisco platforms. But unfortunately, for two reasons, we had to pull it. One was there wasn't anybody else in the world doing, ROV back in 2014, 2015. So we put ourselves at a bit of a disadvantage when you take routes away that some of your customers are receiving from other competitors. But the bigger reason also was that the code was still quite bad. iOS XE specifically. Once the crashes were fixed, we found that the way the RFC was interpreted by Cisco and implemented in that code was actually very broken. So we pulled it back in 2015, and we made another attempt at the middle of last year, I think, April last year. Between ourselves and Work Online, we both agreed to deploy RPKI in Africa. I'm not yet aware of any other operators deploying, but if there are, it would be good to get that feedback here, so we know. And so far it's been going well. We deployed it on iOS XR, which works well, and Junos, which works very well. iOS XE is still broken. We've been trying to work with Cisco to get that fixed, but it's still very broken. But there are ways you can get around it, except that we choose not to because it's a bit complicated in that way. Thankfully, we have very few boxes that run iOS XE that need to have our ROV. So it's not a big problem not having it there. They're not that critical. That's been, I think, the biggest challenge that we've had with getting RPKI deployed. But besides that, it's been going great. We have had 2 or 3 cases now in the past, which has mostly been mistakes. And as Melchior said before, we've noticed that once you raise an issue with the remote network that owns the address space and the AS number, they tend to fix it very, very quickly. Because invalid routes being filtered out is actually an outage for that specific route. In this particular instance, it was a service provider who provides hosting services using the customer's prefixes on their own AS number. So it's a bit tricky when they don't create the ROAs correctly for both AS numbers. Yeah, and that's my spiel. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. I think there's quite a few interesting points in what you were saying. One of the good things is that now that RPKI is really picking up, that you see that vendors are putting more effort behind support for RPKI. At least from what I see happening is that, like recently, MikroTik even now announced that they do support RPKI, which is obviously very good.
Correct. Yeah.
And the other thing is that what you were saying about stepping forward, if you have implemented RPKI, I think that's a really nice call to action, because the more experiences we share and the more networks and folks stepping forward, sharing their experiences, the easier it gets for others to learn and implement as well. So,
yes.
So thanks for that, Mark.
Thank you.
Next up is Kevin, and I think your view is really interesting as well, because you're looking at this from a internet exchange standpoint of view. So Kevin, please go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Kevin Blumberg. I'm the president of the Toronto Internet Exchange, TORIX for short. I'm going to give you a little bit of a background and history on TORIX. And then jump into some of this route security things that we've been doing. We were founded in 1997. We're the largest internet exchange point in Canada at this point. We have everything from a 1 gigabit port to 300 gigabit, and everything in between. So lots of different sizes, lots of different peers. We love statistics. We've been collecting them since the beginning. And just to give you an idea of growth, in 2000, we did 1 gigabit. In 2005, 6. 2010, 54. 2015, 230. 2020, 1.1 terabit. Since March, Toronto has been in a fairly locked down situation with the COVID-19, and our traffic pretty much overnight jumped 20% in response to people and how they used it, etc. It's one of the key benefits of an internet exchange point is the ability to rapidly grow bandwidth, because you're not buying transit that is expensive, you're buying ports, and whatever you need you can get, and that is common among IXPs. The burstability of an internet exchange port generally is far better than what you would do in the internet world. So from a route security point of view, we were one of the initial signatories on the MANRS IXP. It was very easy for us to become a signatory because we've been running IRR-based filtering for over a decade. And there's a reason for it. We have over 75% of our peers are utilizing the route servers. That's a large number. That's the first issue. The second one is, generally speaking, peers are less restrictive on internet exchange points than they are to their own transit or even direct connections. The filtering that they do is usually very limited. This might not be the case for larger peers, but it is definitely the case for smaller peers. They say limit prefix size equals, and they just let it go. So we have a social obligation to these peers to make sure what we're giving them is valid, it's right. Internet exchange points are known to be some of the, unfortunately, and this is historically, easy points to where route hijacks permeate out of because of the lax security that goes on with the route servers. So that to us has always been a key part. So 75% are using the route server. We've been doing it for over a decade. And now we've got about 85,000 IPv4 and 3,500 IPv6 routes on our route servers, okay? Very good makeup. Generally speaking, people will start day one with that, and they can see 25 or 30% of their traffic swing over instantly. RPKI, absolutely needed, no question about it. Now, how do you do it? You're not affecting just yourself, you're potentially affecting all of the peers that are connecting through it. Is it as important for an internet exchange? No. Why? Because we're not the primary connectivity. People don't connect to us solely. They have other internet connections, and we are part of that bundle. But ultimately, if, yes, there could be a huge swing of traffic if we just turned it on without notification, but we're not going to necessarily impact end customers by turning it on. It's a little different versus an internet service provider who could suddenly be dropping routes to people over the internet. We have 2 route validation servers in testing from 2 different open source repositories. We're trying to decide right now if we want to consistently run 2 because they operate in different ways. And at least for the foreseeable future, we want to see how they differentiate in their operation, okay? So that's important. We are working with our vendor. We have a lab set up specifically to not impact the peers today. We have a lab set up where we're testing. We've been doing that now for probably 8 to 12 months. We have bugs in how to put it, not showstopper bugs, but annoyances and features and more importantly, just anomalies that we don't want to deploy with till those are resolved. So we based on discussions, we expect it will be another 6 months, especially now with COVID. We've halted anything new onto the exchange till the end of the year. But we expect in the beginning of 2021 to go live with that. We'll start it in a simple mode where we are flagging and tagging on our communities so that peers can see, and then we will move to an enforced and version slightly later. One thing that's really important about RPKI to also mention is for, I would say probably 5 years ago, there was an initial concept of running the RPKI validation against the IRR data that was coming in, doing it on the nightly or hourly or whatever the scripting that you did have, and then just making sure the routes that you had were valid and dropping everything else. Doing non-real-time route validation today is probably the most dangerous thing that you can do. You can use the example of BGP route dampening. You make one mistake, you're not dampened. You make two mistakes, it's a short dampening time. You keep making mistakes and it gets longer, obviously. But the same with RPKI. If you accidentally make a mistake with your RPKI and your routes become invalid, you need to be able to know that around the world, your routes are going to get fixed 5 minutes, 10 minutes, as the validators are running live on the computers and equipment that you have. You're probably doing a disservice if it takes 24 hours for a bad route to get cleared out of your system. So the last part to this is route servers work. They've worked for many years. Many IXs have route servers in place that they probably have not touched for 5, 6, 7 years because they just worked. Look at the next generation. Look at the features that you can do. Include good BGP community support. Allow your peers to make good decisions about who they're peering with, how they're peering with them. Give them that control. Give them the RPKI. Okay, that's my talk.
Well, thank you, Kevin. I have a question for you, but in the meantime, I would like to also open the poll again, because you mentioned that you are, of course, offering IRR filtering as well. So one of the questions we have in the poll, and maybe we can bring that up, is: do you update your route objects in IRR database or any third-party IRR database? And the question I have for you, Kevin, maybe you want to share something on that. It's maybe a little bit more on the political side, but a lot of your colleagues from internet exchanges, they feel that they should not interfere with what their members are announcing to other members, with the perspective that, of course, they offer communities to tag routes, and but by actually starting to deploy RPKI and IRR filtering and other methods, you sort of start to interfere with route announcements. Can you share some of your considerations about that?
Yeah, it's very simple. If you want to have a direct, unfettered, unfiltered relationship, you can directly connect with a peer. That is not an issue, not a concern. There is only one kind of filtering we ever do, which is during maintenance windows. We will basically turn down BGP to allow for graceful shutdowns of sessions. And that is an RFC to allow for maintenance windows effectively. But if you want to do that, by all means, have a direct session. But that route server is our AS number. It is our responsibility. And we have to be the stewards of that route server. So you're welcome to peer with the route server. You're welcome to send us your routes. But we have an expectation as to what good internet utilization and usage is. And based on that, we require that you have your data in IRR, whichever IRR is appropriate to you. And we will at some point require not necessarily that all of your routes are validated, but that invalids will be pulled from the route server. That will be the first generation of RPKI deployment.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. I think that's a really insightful, and I think sort of the key of your message is that routing security is a shared responsibility, and that we all need to take part in that. I see the results of the poll coming in, so close to 50%, 49 actually, creates route objects in the IRR database. I think that's really good. I would like to emphasize here that RPKI is in no way, because that's a question I see a lot as well, is in no way replacing IRR, at least not at the moment. There is obviously work going on in IETF for path validation and others as well. We might get to that in the discussion as well. And with that, Jorge, Cano, I would like to hear your experiences. Perhaps you want to share them with us.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jorge Cano. I work for NIC Mexico. NIC Mexico is the registry of the country code top-level domain .mx. We are also the local internet registry for internet resources for Mexico. I am the leader of the research development team, and our main goal is to help the internet community and create tools that contribute to the correct development and growth of the internet. Currently, we are developing 3 open source projects. We are more on the developing side of the business. We know how to operate networks, so our experience is more about construction and developing solutions. The first one is called Joule, which is a NAT64 seed implementation for Linux. The second one is Red Dog, which is a framework to implement RDAP servers. And our newest project is Fort, and is co-developed with the help of our friends from APNIC. I use a few minutes to give you a small introduction to the Fort validation project. Fort is a RPKI validator and RTS server with Linux and BSD support. Our goal with Fort is to create the most lightweight, efficient, and secure RPKI validator on the market. Like other validators, Fort downloads all the RPKI objects from the regional internet registries using rsync or RRDP protocol. Then it validates all the digital signatures to confirm that the objects are authentic and not manipulated by a third party, and then communicates the valid raw information to the routers. In our test, using a laptop, Fort can validate all the RPKI tree in a little more than a minute and only use around 100 megabytes of RAM. As you can see, Fort is very efficient with the hardware resources and make it very easy to test Fort on any virtual machine on or old server that has around that is not in use anymore. We released our first version of Fort in August of last year with the help of the community and their feedback, mostly from our region of Latin America. We are continually implementing new features, bug fixes, and suggestions. Our latest release, version 1.2.1, was released this past April. We are a couple of weeks away from our next release, version 1.3.0. And this new version has improved on more flexible log system and more configuration options for operators that like to customize the default behavior of the application of Fort. Fort is an open source project. It's completely free. You can use it free of charge on any test or production environments. All the source code is available at GitHub. You can follow the project over the GitHub page and report if you have any issue or send us an email if you have any problem with the product. For more information of the Fort project, you can visit the official webpage at fortproject.net. Is that the official webpage? And there you can find all the project documentation, installation procedures, configuration, and also the contact information. We are always working hard to make our projects more useful to satisfy the needs of the community. So if you have any questions, suggestions, any problem, please let us know. Your feedback helps us to decide which features to build and what improvements we should make to our validator. We'd love to hear your experience using Fort. Thank you.
Thank you, Jorge. I also have a question for you, but in the meantime, we have prepared a poll as well, which is asking you the question, which RPKI validator are you currently using or planning to use? I think I sort of know the answer, but that's why I think, Jorge, the work you're doing is really interesting to sort of diversify the landscape of validators. So my question to you is, your view might be a bit biased because you're one of the developers, but what would your advice be for folks who are starting to implement RPKI on it, because it's a question I see a lot as well, is how many validators should I run? And should I run, for example, 2 or 3 or just one validator? And should they then be from the same developer, or is it better to diversify? And well, by the way, before you answer that question, I see in the poll that there is a validator mentioned, RPEI validator. That's obviously the, of course, the right validator. Go ahead, Jorge, sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Of course, I think the common practice is to have at least 2. And the recommendation is to have a variety of the implementation. For example, you can use Fort and another of the open source validator, or you can look for another kind of solution. And my suggestion will be test it first. I mean, create a small lab, test, see how this behavior, compare how Fort acts in regards to the other validators, learn the little difference they are, because every developer has their views of how the validation should work. Obviously, all of them follow the same standards or RFCs, but there are small changes between them. So my recommendation is check 2 or 3 of them, select 2 you like, and try to put them in production, at least 2 to have high availability.
Okay, thank you. A question that came up in the chat in the meantime, what is RPKI? RPKI stands for Resource Public Key Infrastructure. It is the whole, well, in conversation, it mainly refers to the whole ecosystem of validating, of publishing, of creating ROAs, and the ROA is obviously the routing statement. There is a really interesting, or there's multiple websites really interesting. rpki.readthedocs.io is one of my favorites. If you're completely new to the subject, rpki.readthedocs.io is a really good place to start. By the way, there are some people sending questions directly to me. I'm sorry, but I'm not able to moderate and type at the same time. So please go to slido.com and post the questions there, so we can pick them up. With that, I would like to give the floor to Tashi, last but not least, to share some of his experiences. Tashi, go ahead.
Thank you, Melchior. Yeah, let's directly jump to slides. Next slide, please. Yeah, before I start, similar background to Mark Tinka. My experience with RPKI was January 2014, SANOC 23, Randy Bush and Philip breathing down. And I used to run BT's network that time, Bhutan Telecom, and we were the host. So he wanted us to do something. Not a good experience, because we were also running on iOS XE. Things broke, and what Randy didn't realize was the king is also my customer in the country. So that was quite a big problem for us. Anyways, moving on from that bad experience to now being at APNIC. First things first, since Jorge is here, something that we found out in our deployathon, things have improved, the gap has closed, but just wanted to share this for everyone's awareness. If you are running 2 different validators, different code base, please, like Jorge mentioned, test, because this is, I just freshly extracted this, about 2-3 hours before this session. Fort and Routinator are, so there is a difference. Fort is missing a few ROAS. So I think this is something that maybe we can discuss later, but we would expect, we as end users or consumers would expect the validation logic is the same on all validators, right? How you code it, on what tools you use to code it, I think that is totally up to people's choice. But when it comes to the validation logic, given you pull the same set of ROAS from where it's published from the repositories, I think the only missing thing, I tried to troubleshoot and try to understand what this was. I could see some validation issues when I look at the logs. So maybe this is something Jorge could expand on later, but definitely there is. So as you can see in the diff output, unified output also shows the same, and side by side also you can see there are ROAs that are missing on one validator compared to the other one. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay, thank you. And what does our team do? I'm with the training and the technical assistance team at APNIC. So we do a lot of outreach work, deployathons, APNIC 48, Apricot, there we go. We have Tinka, as usual, row assigning social at Apricot in Korea. That pretty much kickstarted a lot of things. That was good. And then we have been continuing that same spirit at different NOCs that we go to. On your left side is NP NOC, Nepal. On the right side is Mongolia NOC. We tried free beer, free t-shirts, and get people to get their ROAs created there. So it kind of worked out well. And the middle photo is our Apricot deployathon in Melbourne. Mark, sorry, I cut you out of the frame because no space in the slides. Actually, Mark and Aftab were standing right behind Warwick. And so at the deployathon, we were trying to run Cisco gears, Juniper gears. Arista couldn't help us out, but Nokia gear was there. And then whatever we couldn't do on a physical hardware, we have the NUCs there running all virtual instances there. So we do a lot of those. So the impact of that, next slide, please. And this is what we do. Internally, a colleague of mine and me, we have started building a tool. Right now, not public, because once you put it public, then you have the obligation to maintain it. If we keep it internally, we don't have an obligation. If it goes down, well, it goes down. But we have been tracking, because the reason why we started working on this is throughout last 2.5 years of our trip around the APNIC region, it's amazing how the number of invalids keep increasing as the number of ROAs get increasing. As people create more ROAs, we also see this weird trend where number of invalids keep increasing. Most of those are fixable because either people have mistaken, they didn't look at what they were actually announcing in BGP, they just blindly go create a row and then your max length invalid pops up, or people do not, the person who was creating a row may not be running the network because you're originating a route from an access AS and then the rows correspond only to your transit AS. Vocus is a perfect example in Australia, and we're helping them because I pointed this out to them, Vodafone and Vocus at NZNOG. And then since then, they have been trying to correct it. So next slide, please. Sorry. So here, I wanted to highlight a couple of things. As you can see, Pakistan, since a new colleague of ours joined Yasser, he joined our team, you can see just in 2020, from pretty much less than 10%, now Pakistan is sitting close to, sitting comfortably 95 or 96%, and it's because of one person's effort. And I think people are taking notice, especially given it's Pakistan Telecom, PTCL, of the YouTube fame. So it's really lots of work, lots of outreach, lots of hand-holding, but it's good to see this country's actually picking up. Mongolia, just about last month, Mongolia was sitting at about 60 to 70%. Now it's close to 96%, and there are only 6 networks, and we are still chasing them. Through the MNOC team, we're chasing them. I think we'll be there comfortably. Australia, Sorry about that up and down, that spike and dip. It's because Vocus deleted about close to 300 of their ROAs because of that mistake that they had done in the initial creation, where everything was created for AS4826, but things were originating from 4 other access AS that they had. So we're helping them correct it. So, okay, so next slide, please. The third thing I wanted to share was this excitement in the community, just because with the beta version of Router OS version 7 coming out, we did see a post by someone who had tested it, and Job Schneider had tagged it, and internally someone pushed it to me. So we were doing our own independent test. A colleague of mine, Dave, he's doing this test. And I think we don't agree with I think we had a different finding compared to what the other person did the test. We think it's still broken. The beta code is broken, and MikroTik has finally accepted it about 3 or 4 days ago. Last week, they said, yep, I think you guys got it right. They will re-release again a beta. Because here is the logic that my colleague played with. Peer sending all 3 different states when we use the default Router OS config of matching invalids. If it matches invalid, the action is dropped. Something weird was happening. Except for unknowns, everything, even valids, were tagged as invalids, and nothing was going to the FIP. And then when we added a valid statement above the invalid, everything got marked as a valid and got admitted into the FIP. So that is something that we raised in the MikroTik forum, and then the MikroTik folks, they said, yep, they accept it and they will re-release it. So I thought I'll share this with the crowd here. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, that is, I think, a perfect showcase of how everyone tries to work together and make this whole ecosystem better. Because one of the things, as I said earlier, I work for a vendor, and one of the things we noticed as well is that a lot of the RFCs are not, the RFCs described RPKI and related things are not that clear always. So there's quite a few differences in implementations between the different vendors. So we definitely need that feedback and that discussion going on where to improve and what should be expected behavior and whatnot. So that's really good. We have a few more minutes left, so we've received a few questions. I know that Mark needs to drop off in a few minutes, so I first would like to thank Mark Tinka for his contribution to this discussion. Then the first question, yes, that came in was actually indeed a question for Kevin. What vendors does TORIX use? I would be interested to add to hear what validators you're using, and if you're experiencing the same issues Mark Tinka talked about.
So we use Cisco route servers, 1001 X's, specifically with route server code on it. There's a special build for that. Generally, there haven't been any showstoppers. What we've seen is some minor issues. One thing that we're trying to get clarification on, and again, this is all part of the test philosophy, is RPKI rescanning eats up real CPU. Yep. And what is the priority of that to the detriment of other things that are going on? So if the CPU is being hit hard by the revalidation, is that going to impact other things that we need to do on that box because it is CPU, or is the prioritization done on to a low degree? So those are the types of things that it could be a cosmetic issue, or it could be a real issue. We aren't sure yet, and that's the type of things that we're looking at. I don't think any of this is specific to one vendor. I think all of the panelists will say they have had some issues somewhere with vendor X, Y, or Z. The older boxes have definitely far worse problems because RPKI really wasn't in active utilization at that point. And it's only been in the last, I would say, 18 months that a real number of routes have come in and a real number of growth have come in to sort of start to test this live code. So we're actually at a really good point in that, but we do need to test it. As far as which validators we're using, all of them. We are literally setting up 2 different validators, going through, blowing them off, starting with a different one, blowing it off, going with a different one. Our team really wants to understand what the differences are, how they're going to play into it, whether we can run 2 separate ones, and if that's practical or not. So we're going through pretty much the entire list at this point and have not set our sights on which specific validator we're going to be using.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. Another question, I'm not sure who to address it to directly, but the question, since IPv6 supports a large number of addresses, machines use their own routable addresses versus IPv4 private address with NOT. Does that expose IPv6 to attack? Who on the panel wants to chime in on that question? I think it depends, right? I mean, NET has probably been seen as sort of an extra security measurement or abused as a sort of layer of security. So the question is more probably, now that hosts get a direct routable IPv6 address, which is publicly exposed, does that open your network to more security issues? It's a little side discussion here, but in my opinion, NET was never designed as per se as a security measurement, although it's used like that in a lot of cases. But I think the security in this perspective is sort of should be approached the same as with IPv4. I'm curious to hear if any of the panelists have an opinion on that.
Yeah, no, same as me. I actually need to get going. Same as me. I mean, yeah, I mean, NAT in and of itself isn't really a security mechanism. It just creates the idea that it is. So, I mean, fundamentally, you'd have to, protect your devices, your hosts, make sure your firewall also supports v6 protection and so forth. I mean, there'll probably be a bias towards running IPv6 for NAT also, NAT 6.6, but NAT is not a security mechanism, and adding NAT to IPv6 is not really needed because you don't have an IP address shortage. So it's just a change of philosophy and mindset, really, to start, using IPv6 correctly and to really do real protection for your devices and your network under IPv6.
Yep.
Yeah.
Can I add something there, Melchior?
Go ahead.
Yeah. How do I put it politely? If you can go out, I can come in, right? That's how I tell people when they assume that NAT gives you that level of protection. If you can get out, someone can come in, right? And it rather gives you that false sense of security, like Mark was saying, where you are a bit more relaxed, which you shouldn't be, whereas in V6, given it has that true end-to-end sort of capability, you would be more conscious, you'd be more aware, you would want to secure things a bit more carefully. You would want to make sure that your end devices are patched up to date, are nicely secure. But with NAT, like I said, I think it's a nice false security, but like I said, if you can go out, definitely people can come in too.
Yeah, well, introducing IPv6 in that perspective is maybe in general a nice opportunity or occasion to relook your security.
I can quickly add something. Awal here. What I want to say is whether people don't like it or not, IPv6 is going to take over the IPv4 space at some point. And security, there are security measures that you can take to fight against those concerns. So it's not that hard to, to implement IPv6 on the infrastructure level, and at some point you have to do it.
True. Yeah, that's absolutely true. Third question from Kim. Really interesting question. If anyone got experience with secure communication between router and validator. This is I think, really interesting topic, as indeed the RFC describes that there are three methods of securing RPKI RTR traffic. That's either SSH, TLS, or TCP/AO. So I know that Cisco, for example, supports SSH. I know there's a hack on Juniper to build a SSH tunnel to a validator as well. I'm not sure any of the panelists actually have experience with this. I can imagine that while testing, for example, maybe Kevin, in your case, as you're running a Cisco route server, that you might have configured SSH to secure RPKI RTR traffic?
Thankfully, I'm not the one doing the work. I can ask them offline, but I don't actually know which way they've gone with that.
Okay, okay. Yeah,
in the data center, we, sorry, Awal here. So in the data center, we just use the TCP, and we haven't tested the SSH or TLS. We'll be doing it in the coming days, because security is the most important thing in the national data center.
Yeah, I think it's especially interesting because you're making routing decisions based on that data. So you might want to make sure that you receive it via a secure way. And years ago, we already decided that we would not want to use Telnet anymore to configure the router. So why now start connecting to our validators via an unsecure method? The good thing is I can share that that both Cisco, Nokia, and Juniper are working on TCP/AO. I know Cisco already has TCP/AO code, and Nokia and Cisco are testing. Sorry, Nokia and Juniper. So that is a method coming which can be used also to replace MD5 in the future, because as we all know, MD5 is deprecated as well. So in order to secure our BGP sessions between two peers or via an internet exchange, we now use MD5, but there's better methods coming for that as well. Last question that came in is how to avoid misconfiguration of CAs in RPKI, risk of revoking the NIRs. I think, Jorge, that could be an interesting question for you.
Yeah, that's a great question. Currently on port 121, we have a bug, and that's related to this. We're fixing this in the next version, and this will release in a couple of weeks. And right now, what we're doing is to alert on the log system that some of the CA certificate or the communication with the rear is broken or is something wrong with it. So the operator can get notified and try to fix the problem. And we're trying to make this more clear to the operator when this kind of problem is happening. But if the community has some suggestions of what else the validator can do in this case, we are happy to hear that kind of feedback. I don't know if I answered the questions.
Okay, I think another interesting result which came out of the polls we did was that not that many have created ROAS yet. So that's a question perhaps to the group, is why do we think that is? I mean, a lot of events are organized, hackathons, deployathons, webinars like this one, to create awareness. But still, you see that yeah, the number of ROAS created in the end could be bigger. So I'm interested to learn how we can increase the number of ROAS. Mark, I don't know if you're still here or if you already had to move to your next meeting, but maybe you want to comment.
Unfortunately, we lost Mark.
Okay, all right, okay. So Tashi, what do you think? I mean, you're running a lot of deployathons,
Yes.
and you're making a lot of awareness around this. But what is your feeling? Why not everyone has created ROAS yet?
I don't know, Melchior. Okay, that was supposed to be a joke. But I think the biggest problem that we find in our region is, I don't know how the portals work in other RIRs, the backend RMS or RPKI portal. Problem we find in our region is the corporate contact needs to give permission to the tech contact. It's the tech contacts that are running the network, that are operating the network, but it's the corporate contacts who are the big bosses, who may not even be aware of this framework. And like Mongolia, helping them, I realized that, oh, the boss is away for a while and he's the corporate contact and he can't give me permission to certify my resources. And it's a permission they need to actually give in the system for them to actually enable RPKI engine, meaning generate their key pairs and also sign their resources. So I feel one could be definitely that, the fact that, because I don't think the RIR frameworks were initially meant to be a part of this trust anchor. It's just by virtue of them being 5 RIRs who delegate addresses that they are in the framework as trust anchors. But then the way addresses are delegated and how those resources are managed, those things might need to change, where I think the technical contacts need to be given that default permission to be able to turn on the RPKI engine for their resources. So in our region, I find that to be one major problem. And the other major problem could be, like many of us know, having run networks, is your majority of your time goes in firefighting, majority of your time. So, and RPKI from a business sense doesn't give people anything unless things break. That's when they lose out a lot. But for from a business perspective, I think people would give priority to firefighting issues that they have in their networks. And I think maybe they plan to do it. Maybe they say next month, and it just passes away like that. So that's my take on it. Okay.
And I can add to that. People don't fix things till you have breakage. And you know, use your home consumer who has never configured a backup, and suddenly they lose everything. And I can bet you the next day they've got backups. Many people have not been affected by route hijacks, and the moment that they are affected, they are absolutely deploying RPKI. I think the RIRs overall have made it as easy as possible to do it. And I think the next level of resurgence with deployment that you're going to see is because of pressure from the upstream providers requiring a phase-in approach to then a date where your routes are just not going to go through their network unless they have been RPKI enabled. So we're starting to see major carriers now filtering on RPKI, and I'll just leave it because it's working and my IRR database entries are good enough, is coming to an end. And that coming to an end might be 5 years out, but the pickup is absolutely there.
All right, thanks Tashi and Kevin for sharing that. I think as we're running a little over time, there's one last question I think we should go into. There has been asked more questions, but if we're able, we will answer them offline. And in the meantime, I would suggest to bring up the last poll for today. In one word, could you tell us what you liked about today's event? And in the meantime, we'll ask the panel the question, any experiences or recommendations on RPKI validators? I think that would be an interesting one for Awal to start answering.
Yeah, we have tested all the 4 open source validator implementations, and we have done extensive tests in different events, and Tashi also checked in Deployathon as well. Now, what we are doing here in the data center is we are running 2 validators. One is the Routinator and the other one is RIPE NCC validator. The reason why, because Routinator is very simple to configure, very easy, and they don't require much of the resources. So you can run it in a very tiny server with very minimum RAM and CPU. The RIPE NCC validator runs Java in the backend, so you need some memory and CPU for that. But it is also quite simple to configure. And also for troubleshooting and visibility of your VRPs are very similar to in those 2 implementations. So this is my personal experience, but if anybody else can add, if they have if they're running with the other 2, but we are running these 2 because we want to do one. I mean, we want redundancy in the validator level, so that's what we are doing.
Right, thank you. And with that, I think we've come to the end of this panel discussion. I would want to thank Awal, Mark, Kevin, Jorge, and Tashi very much for their input, for their ideas, sharing their knowledge. I'm pretty sure that if you have any questions, you can reach out to them. Same goes for me. If you have any questions for myself, I'm sorry I couldn't answer them in the chat, but feel free to look us all up or send us an email. And with that, I would like to conclude the panel. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Melchior.
Thank you, everyone. And we will send the recording of this call. I know most of you have asked for it, so we'll have the recording ready so that if any one of you who wants to go back and listen to it, you'll have it. So thank you very much for joining this call, and thanks to our panelists, thanks to the moderator, thanks to everyone for staying even when we went over the hour. So thanks so much, and see you next time. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.